Walter Higgins closed his eyes and sang 4 words. Jonathan Vale shot up out of his chair so fast the desk rattled. Stop the show. Right now. The whole theater froze. In 15 seasons, no one had ever seen him do that. No warning, no build-up, just an old man, a melody, and 4 words that stopped the room cold. Rewind an hour. Just another Thursday night taping. The Meridian Theater, packed with 3,000 people. Cameras rolling, millions watching from home. Another hopeful act waiting in the wings. Another audition. Another nervous hopeful. Another chance for the night to end, just like every other one had. Jonathan Vale sat where he always sat. Black shirt. Arms crossed. That same flat, unimpressed stare he'd worn for 15 years. Beside him, Renata Cole flipped through her notes. Diane Foster sipped her water. Elias Grant checked his watch. It was late. The good ones usually came earlier. Then, a very old man walked out. Slow, steady, leaning on a cane with a brass handle worn smooth from decades of use. 95 years of living sat easily on his shoulders. He wore a small pin on his lapel, a single medal, polished bright. He'd asked his granddaughter to press his shirt 3 times that morning until the collar sat exactly right. Marcus Bell met him center stage. "What's your name, sir?" "Walter Higgins." "And how old are you today, Walter?" 95. A dry smile. Older than most of this building, probably, the crowd laughed, warm and easy. "What are you going to sing for us tonight?" Walter's smile faded, just slightly. "A song I haven't sung in 73 years. "Why so long?" "Because I made a promise never to sing it again." He tapped his cane once against the floor. "I'm here tonight to break that promise." Renata Cole leaned forward. "What kind of promise, Walter?" "The kind you make to a dying man," Walter said. "The kind you don't break lightly." Elias Grant tilted his head. "So why break it now, after all this time?" "Because I'm 95, Walter said simply. "I don't get many more chances to keep a promise or break one. Figured tonight was as good a night as any." The audience went quiet, listening hard. "I wrote that song for a friend of mine," Walter continued. "The night he died in my arms." The room went still. Diane Foster's pen stopped moving. "What was his name?" Marcus asked gently. Eddie Vale." Jonathan Vale's whole body went rigid. His hand found the edge of the desk, gripping it like he needed the balance. The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. Silence, then more silence. Then the sound of 3,000 people forgetting to breathe. "Eddie Vale was my grandfather," Jonathan said, voice barely steady. "I never met him. He died before my father was even a year old." Walter's eyes, pale with age, found Jonathan's face and held there. "Then, I think you're the reason I finally worked up the nerve to come here tonight. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened 73 years earlier." Walter and Eddie enlisted within a week of each other. 2 boys from towns 40 miles apart. They'd never have met if the war hadn't put them in the same unit. They were 19. Neither of them had left their home state before basic training. They became inseparable fast. The way young soldiers sometimes do, when everything familiar has been stripped away. When all that's left is the man standing next to you. Eddie was the funny one. Always trading his rations for something better. Always humming some half-remembered tune from home. Walter was quieter, steadier, the one who kept Eddie out of trouble more times than either of them could count. They shared a tent, a mess kit. An unspoken understanding that whatever happened over there, they'd get through it together, or not at all. Eddie talked about his wife constantly. Margaret, back home, pregnant with their first child. He carried her photograph in his breast pocket, worn soft at the corners from being handled every single day. He talked about the son he was sure he was having, the name he'd already picked, the fishing trips he was planning for a boy who wasn't born yet. Then came the night that changed everything. Their unit was caught in an ambush during a routine patrol. Gunfire from a ridge nobody had spotted in time. Eddie went down hard, shrapnel tearing through his side. Walter dragged him behind a burned-out truck, pressed both hands against the wound, screamed for a medic who was already too far away to reach them in time. Eddie knew. Men in that condition usually did. His breathing had already gone shallow. His hand kept searching for something to hold on to, and Walter gave him his own, gripping back just as hard. "Sing something," Eddie said, voice already fading. "Something for Margaret. Something for the boy." Walter didn't know any songs worth singing at a moment like that. So he made one up, right there. Words falling out of him in whatever order they came. A simple melody built from nothing but panic and love and the sound of his own voice shaking. He doesn't remember most of the words now. He remembers Eddie's hand tightening around his sleeve. He remembers Eddie's breathing slowing to match the rhythm of it, like the song itself was easing him toward the end. He remembers the smell of smoke, the sound of his own voice cracking on a note he'd made up seconds earlier, and how none of that mattered, because Eddie's eyes had softened, just slightly, like he was somewhere better already. "Don't sing that for anyone else," Eddie whispered, near the very last of it. "That one's just for us. Promise me." Walter promised. Eddie died before the medic arrived. Walter carried him the rest of the way anyway. He refused to let anyone else take the weight, as if setting him down even 1 second early would somehow make the promise mean less. Walter carried that promise home across an ocean. He carried it through Margaret's funeral thank-you letters, through the guilt of surviving something Eddie hadn't, through decades of family barbecues and funerals and weddings where someone would inevitably ask him to sing. He always found a reason to say no. He wrote to Margaret for years after. Careful letters, never overstepping, just making sure she and the baby, a boy named Thomas, had what they needed when times were hard. He mailed what he could, quietly, whenever his own paycheck allowed it. He never once mentioned the song. He never visited in person. Some griefs, he decided, were better carried at a distance. He told himself Margaret deserved a fresh start, not a stranger showing up every year to remind her of the worst night of her life. He wasn't sure that was true. It was easier than the alternative. Margaret passed when Thomas was still young. Walter's letters slowed, then stopped, swallowed up by his own life, his own family, the ordinary business of growing old. Decades later, after Thomas Vale himself had passed, Jonathan found a box of old letters going through his father's things, yellowed envelopes, tied together with string. Tucked inside a coffee tin his father had kept on a closet shelf for as long as Jonathan could remember, without ever explaining why. Letters signed only W.H. Curious. Careful. He tracked the initials to a name. The name to a veterans registry, the registry to a modest nursing home 3 states away. He didn't introduce himself right away. He wasn't sure how. Instead, he quietly covered the gaps in Walter's care. Better equipment. A private room. Small comforts most residents there never got. All of it routed through the facility's own assistance fund. No name attached. The same condition every time. "This isn't for my image," he told the administrator, when she gently suggested a visit might mean the world to the old man. "This is for someone who was there for my family when I couldn't be. Leave it alone." Every few months, a report came back. Walter's healthy. Walter's asking fewer questions about the donor. Walter hums, sometimes, late at night, though the staff can never quite make out the tune. Jonathan read every report twice. He wondered, each time, if the humming was the song. He never asked. Some questions felt like they belonged to someone else's grief, not his to disturb. Jonathan thought that was the most he could offer. A quiet kindness nobody would ever trace back to him, exactly the way he wanted it. Until tonight, because standing in front of him now was the last man alive who remembered his grandfather's voice. And he was about to sing the words Eddie Vale never got the chance to say to his own son. Some promises don't expire. They just wait for the right room to be broken in. Jonathan walked closer until he was standing right beside him. The nursing home. The private room. That was me. Walter's hand found Jonathan's arm, gripping tight. I always figured it was some charity with a form letter. His voice cracked. I never imagined it was Eddie's own blood, taking care of an old man who couldn't even keep his last promise to him. You kept it for 73 years, Jonathan said. That's not breaking it. That's honoring it exactly as long as it needed honoring. Walter shook his head slowly, tears cutting new paths through old wrinkles. Eddie would have liked you, he said. He talked about the family he was going to have every single day. You'd have made him proud, whether you can carry a tune or not. Jonathan Vale was the man 3 networks had built an entire brand around. The judge who never cried, who never softened, who never let anyone see a crack. He put both hands over his face and wept. In front of 3,000 people and a live camera, Renata Cowell was crying. Diane Foster was crying. Even Elias Grant, arms usually folded tight across his chest, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Jonathan pulled the old man into a careful hug, the brass-handled cane clattering to the floor between them. The audience rose to their feet as one, the sound of the applause rolling like thunder through the theater. Every single person standing, every single one. If a story like this one moved you, share it and subscribe so you never miss the next. Then Walter picked up his cane, steadied himself, and closed his eyes one more time. And for the first time in 73 years, he sang the whole song, start to finish. The one made up beside a burned-out truck on the worst night of his life. His voice was thin and cracked in places. Nobody cared. By the final note, there wasn't a dry eye left in the building. Jonathan Vale reached under the desk and pressed the crystal button without saying a single word. He didn't need to. 6 months later, Jonathan had the song recorded properly. Just Walter's voice, unpolished, exactly as it had always been meant to sound. He plays it once a year, on the anniversary of his grandfather's death, alone, with the door closed. He visits Walter every month now. No cameras, no press. Just 2 men from different generations of the same story, talking about a soldier neither of them got to keep. Sometimes Walter tells him small details he'd forgotten to mention before. The way Eddie laughed, the card games they played by flashlight, the particular, ridiculous way he complained about the food. Every visit adds one more piece to a grandfather Jonathan never got to meet. Small pieces, slowly assembled. A man built back out of memory, one visit at a time. Walter still says he broke his promise that night. Jonathan disagrees. Some songs are only ever meant for one listener at a time. It just took 73 years. And a grandson who never met the man for that listener to finally be found.